So let's assume you have your drawing on there already. What's the first step when you paint? Now my first step is to do an underpainting. So this is the black and white assignment. So begin with thinning out your paint, whatever medium you use, and I use a mixture of Gamsol and liquid, and sometimes I use just liquid. So there's no right or wrong as far as where you begin. Just start somewhere, and it's pretty liquidy, pretty thin. Use a large brush. Now that I'm working on this, I think this is too small of a brush, so I'm going to get a larger brush. Still, this is a number, probably about 6. Yep, it's number 6 filbert bristle. And for the size of this image, I think that's a good size. Still allows me to get some control of the pigment and the structure, but also not waste a lot of time with a lot of little marks. So the underpainting is for your benefit. Really, it helps you see the value systems, the lights and darks, and to continue working on the structure. Essentially the drawing. Think of it as a charcoal drawing. I don't want to border around the objects. So often I will actually draw through or shade through the edge of an object. Because later, when I do my first layer of gray over the top of this, I can just paint this back in. It's not a big deal. What will help is if you try to not do a drawing and fill within that border of the drawing. So painting these edges out, it's not a prerequisite. It's just it helps keep me from filling in by painting those edges out. I did the drawing once on here. I can do it again, and I can do it with the brush. I think you can too. So there's an edge or a border there, right? I do that in order to get a clean, crisp edge, but then I proceed to paint it out. This is going to be painted over, hence the term underpainting. Now, so don't worry too much. If it's going to be streaky, it's going to probably look bad. This is the teenage years. I don't know, maybe you had some great teenage years, but this is the awkward stage, or one of them. There are many. This can sometimes be the stage where you don't want people to see it. Don't look at it yet. Give me some time to fix it, to work it up. But it's going to be streaky, so I pretty much write off the first layer. This is so that I can see the value systems, the the lights and the darks, the abstraction, how everything is laid out on the page. In this case, the canvas. Okay, because I want to show that there's a core light, reflective light right here, I'm going to paint around it here and then wash it out. All right, let's work on the sphere shadow real fast. It's quite a dark sphere shadow. I'm going to keep it kind of neutral. I don't want to go piercingly dark here. I don't want it to be a hole. Holes for shadows are bad, and it's easy to do. And to keep your shadow from being a hole, and I'll show that in another section of this video, but you add some mark. That's one way. The direction that your mark is in is another. And also the value. Just want to bring this edge back in before I say this piece is finished. Here you see I've mixed up my black, which is burnt umber plus French ultramarine blue to make my black. And to test if it's a good black, over here I add a little bit of white to a little piece of it. And if it leans to French ultramarine blue, I'll add more umber. If it leans this gray into burnt umber, it seems too brown, add a little bit more ultramarine blue. And then you can kind of get a better gauge of whether that's a good black or not. You can't tell until you add some white. Once I had that done, I mixed up 5 different gradations of that black with different amounts of white. And now I'm ready to paint. So what I have here is my medium, and you may or may not see me work with much medium over the top of my underpainting. It really kind of depends on the viscosity of this pigment and how it flows on here. So the medium, this will what you use for your medium will depend on the year that you take this oil painting class. So this year we're using water-based oils. So this is a water-based oil medium. So it's a fast drying medium. And in other years we might be using liquid. And I will use it pretty much the same way. So let's get to it. There's no right or wrong as where to start, except begin with your shadows. That's where you're going to have the most impact, is starting with your shadows first. See how I didn't even use any medium? I put it out here just in case some of my color is a little too thick. The process of painting is not specific initially, it's general to specific. So I'm working in bigger passageways. Bigger passageways of value and blocking in generalities. Get that up there. I'm going to put the shadow here. It's not pure black. I don't want this sphere to sit in a hole. So it's a very dark gray. And at some point I will paint some values within it so that you can see some light, flecks of light inside of it. If I don't, that will also contribute to it appearing like it's a hole. Painting is not a paint by numbers situation. You know, if you notice your drawing is wrong, the structure's wrong, get the brush out and slice. Don't feel like you're locked into a previous structure. And it's forgiving whether it's color or black and white. You know, this is just a black and white painting, but it doesn't matter if this were also color. So do I like that better? Yes. I think I might cut it just a tiny bit more for effect, because if I make it slightly thinner at the back, you know, a slightly steeper trajectory, then it might feel more like it's receding quicker. We'll see if I keep that. So, values and color, maybe I should just say pigment. Pigment, it's all relative. So the values that you see that I'm putting down look the way they do because of what they're next to. So if I didn't start with an underpainting, for example, all of these would be very dark against a bright white surface. And so that's why I do the underpainting. And now as I build up the actual painting on top, it's not as jarring, as drastic. So right now, in order to become more specific with this, I need to paint around it a little bit more. I need to make some decisions about what the background is going to look like roughly. Because right now, if you can see in the image, that the tabletop is a lot darker. So before I work on this cube, it's actually not a matter of me trying to put background in first. It's just that it's next to. I want to put what it's next to down somewhat. Okay, now there's a transition inside of here. And I'm going to mix this on the canvas. So I'm actually going to take my black that I made, and I'm going to mix on the canvas here. But there's a transition. Do you see the transition? That it's darker when as it's further away from the light source. The light is hitting the table, and even though it's gray, it's hitting that table and bouncing off, and there's a reflected light here. And I don't want to lighten this up a lot. Instead, what I'm doing is darkening the shadow in order to make this appear lighter. And there's no one direction that I'm painting this in. And notice I changed the position on my brush. I'm holding it at more of a distance. Usually when I hold my brush this way, it's for accuracy. It's a linear approach. And if I want to blend it a little bit, often you'll see me switch the direction or the way I hold it, because it's just softer. And you may or not be able to hear that when I was working this way, there's kind of you hear the dabs. But when I'm working softly, it's very quiet. So I'm putting a shape in. It's fairly broken, that shape. It's not a solid shape. And the fact that it's wet paint is breaking that shape, so it's not uniform. Or it's not an island of dark. What I often tell my students is you have an opportunity. You know, it's a lost opportunity once the paint dries to do anything with that wet paint. It's locked in, right? Now it's open. It's wet. Use that opportunity to manipulate it, to modify it. Okay, so is there any movement here? There's just a little bit. I'm going to make it darker at the top of that. So I'm using a dark, and I'm going to blend in. So more mixing on the canvas. So I'm trying to use that opportunity while it's wet to manipulate it. Okay, so I'm going to go in and lighten that shadow up because I don't want this to appear as a whole, like I've said before. And I'm going to paint into the sphere a little bit. And I'm going to lie in a few places. So it's a lot sharper, this shadow, but I want it to feel like it goes back in space. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it sharper in front and softer in back. Because sharp edges will pop out and soft edges will recede. So it creates the feeling of it that there's atmosphere that you're observing, but also it's kind of a lens effect that we're all used to seeing. You know, a soft background. So you reestablish that back line. See how it goes on rough? I'm putting a little more paint down so it goes on smoother. If you don't have enough paint on your brush, it'll pick up on all the weaves of the canvas. So as it's very dry right now. So I just need physically more on my brush. And it's actually loaded up on the bottom of the brush, not on the top. You see that? And so I'm turning it over and it's going to make it sharp because all the paint was on the bottom. Now let me go in and quickly transition this. I'm wiping my brush so I don't bring a lot of light up here. Putting some dark in, and I'm feathering this back down into the light. Sort of simplifying a little bit. Okay, so let's get into the sphere. Now I'm ready for the sphere. So I'm going to essentially repeat the same thing by putting my values in sort of general terms here. This is where I want to fix anything also. I want this reflection to be a little smaller still. Now there's a great transition right here, because right now it's a closed shape. I don't have it open. And what I mean by open or break it is it's like a comet. It kind of diffuses on this right side here, doesn't it? It's sharp and becomes really clear right at this point. So I'm going to paint the bottom of this out a little bit. I'm going to go right up to the base of this and paint right over it. I don't want there to be any border, like an empty canvas line or border there. So I'm just painting right up to it. And then later on I can bring the sphere down with light. You want your edges in the shadows to be soft anyway. You don't want them to be really sharp, because where the sharpness is will be right here on the top. The camera lens, as well as the eye, doesn't perceive shadows very well, doesn't perceive these darks very well. So I don't want to I don't want to bring them out. So let me move on. Keep moving, keep moving. This edge I'm going to lose. Totally fine with that. That way I can kind of keep the momentum of this curve going of my brush mark. Often when you can kind of make out how something was a painting, how something was put together, I can sort of dismantle a painting with my eyes, right? Just sort of, especially if you see a shape that has been filled in. But when a painter actually paints beyond, that illusion is gone. Like you won't see a mark that sort of suddenly stops and turns or starts there. It'll be a mark that kind of continues. And later on, I can bring a dark along the back side and sharpen it. The core shadow in this sphere is right here. In this little pocket. What's happening is it's contrasting a little too much against the background because the background isn't dark enough yet. So I will probably go to the background fairly soon so that I can better judge whether this value is correct or not. But I first want to put my my mid-tone and light here. It's too light, so I'm gonna that's probably better. I think we'll work with that. I'm going to be blending initially with the shadow edge. So I'm very lightly touching it, and I'm going with the curvature. So I'm not. You don't want to pull this way. Not yet, at least. Some artists do that very successfully. I like to at least start off with a shadow edge that is smooth in this type of direction. So one half of the brush is on the light and the other half is on the dark. Now the light source is hitting the sphere pretty directly. However, in order to make this reflected light appear light, it has to be quite dark. So now I'm going in and messing that edge up a little bit. I'm kind of brushing not just this way any longer, but I'm kind of washing in a almost like a crosshatch kind of feathering to obliterate it. Now this isn't done by any means, but I'm just want to get some of that edge to soften. And I can move on. So let's get a really bright light here. Now I'm wiping my brush, and then I'm going to manipulate what I've already put down. If I don't wipe the brush, now the brush is dark because I went into the dark. I wipe it again. Okay, I'm going to add some more white. let's put a bright white right in the middle. I'm dragging the brush around it in order to, one side of the brush is on the light and the other is on the dark. And I'm continually wiping the brush because at some point the brush is too dirty. And I don't want to drag the light too far into the dark. So it looks really strange right now. It's like this way too reflective kind of sphere right now, and it's also a little large, but let me first, before I go any further, I need to put some background in so that I can then work this edge up, and I can then fix this edge here as well. So the dark is pretty, the background's pretty dark actually. It's quite dark, so doesn't really cover that. So now this will disappear, which will be good. I want the chiaroscuro effect to be more prevalent or pronounced. And so letting this disappear into the background, it's going to appear more natural, how we actually see, instead of having a sharp edge. Now the background drapery it undulates, doesn't it? It's dark to light to dark. It's sort of this nice rhythm, which I don't know if I'm going to get into too much right now, but it's exactly like what I did there, from dark to mid to light. I want this to be reversed, or at least have a little bit of a backlit kind of quality to it. So I'm going to add some light here. So I want this cube to appear more in silhouette right there, like it is in the photo. It's a little too big of a space, so I'm gonna use a little bit smaller brush. Back to the original number 3. try and get rid of this background, even more of it. So I'm trying to make that undulate, go back and forth, look like it pops out and then recedes and then pops out again, at least to give the impression initially of what's happening back there. It's a bouncing off point. Okay, let's put I gotta make sure this matches. So I'm gonna cheat. Let's drop this down a tad on this side here. Actually, I wanna see if it looks fine if I drop it down quite a bit. So I don't like this right here. It's too light. It's almost like a little spotlight on that guy. And I'm gonna paint this out. Paint right over that edge. So I'm painting the cube out. So that I can paint it back in. And I have lost all my blacks. I'm going to mix it up real quick. I want that dark to crawl up the side of the sphere a little bit. And if it's dark, it'll feel like it's rounded. Even though in the original it's pretty light. It may require you to sort of strain a little bit to see how that should be a dark. Let's work on that shadow. So it's still, the paint's still wet around it. So this is going to help me. And I'm going to go ahead and paint right up to and possibly beyond the shadow's border. And the reason why I paint beyond it is I'm not going to want it to be sharp anyway. The shadow in this instance should not be sharper than the object itself. And there's a core shadow right in here, right? And it should be blurry on all sides, actually, in this instance. And so I'm going to go in and blur that real soon. So one thing that I notice happens a lot with shadows is that a person will paint the lights in one direction and the shadows in another direction. And I would recommend not doing that. Or they will paint this in one direction and they'll do just what I just did. Sort of paint within that shadow and make it its own shape. See, it's like a comma shape there. I would say a better practice would be to, if I'm going to paint it this in this direction, try if you can to paint this also in this direction. So put your marks in there at the similar direction. I have to go in and obliterate this back edge a little bit. And then I'm going to put some marks in that go at a actually, let me change the shape of this. I'm going right into the cube. And then I'm going to bring the cube back out. I don't want the cube to get lost totally. Let me obliterate this back corner a little bit. It's right in the shadow. And I don't want the shadow edge to be too distinct. Okay, so let's put some details in, shall we? You know where it's chipped in here? Let's put those in. I'm going to give the impression that it's chipped. I'm not too concerned with it being exact. The whole front edge of this cube is lighter than what I have it. Honestly, I think having a little bit of a roughness to the surface makes it more believable. So now I'm going to put the shadow, little darks in that I see in these little chips. Not getting too carried away. Now it's not going to be black, it's the dark of this side here, using the same value. Now let's say you want to make something glow. I actually have some drapery here too that I'll probably do at some point here. But say you want to make something glow. Now it's all in the transition. You know, if you want to have a spotlight effect, you know, I did it here, but what about in here? I kind of want there to be a spotlight effect right along this edge and here. So really quickly, let me put the shadow here, put this down in here so you can see its effect better. And so I want it to look like it's a really kind of a nice light that sits right on the edge here. So wipe my brush and then quickly transition it. I'm not pulling it any farther than that. So now I'm going to make this look like a fold. But currently, right now, I'm just filling it in. Getting rid of the canvas color. Okay, so I'm going to paint beyond this. I don't want this to look, one option is to make this look really light, to make that fold pop out. The other option, what I'm choosing to do, is darken the top of this drapery here to show this edge. That way it doesn't interfere with the light. Now there is a light that's really bright right there, which would be great to capture. So I'm going to put it in straight white initially. But I can't leave it like that. Straight white, wipe the brush, and then blend it out. There's also a cone shape. You know, the drapery sort of defines this, brings out this little cone shape right here. Just trying to keep it simple. And same thing there. For now, I don't want to draw attention to it. So that's about it for now. Well, thanks for watching. Let me bring you in a little closer so you can see what it looks like technically. See some of the texture of the painting. Now this is the black and white piece, and this was an alla prima demonstration. So typically I like painting wet on wet like this, but then I would let it dry and go into it 2 or 3 more layers, at least 2, just to give it a little more detail, a little more volume and realism. So good luck. Hope you learned something. Bye-bye.